My topic today is engaging your child in academic activities. And also, as Jennifer said, I teach early childhood or early intervention. I'm the early childhood teacher at John Archer School. And as you note, I have the best kids in the world, and that would include alumni to my classroom. That's you, Wendy. So the main takeaways of the presentation, what I would like for you today is to explore the impact of your child's communication on the learning and retention of content presented. I want you to walk away with ideas about embedding academics into your child's life and increasing independence through play and related activities. And really, I want you to think about rethinking what academic means and what academic is for our kids. So hopefully we'll have a different perspective on that when we leave here today. And then the third thing is I want you to gain resources or gain knowledge on resources. So the third component of this presentation today, I want you all to have an opportunity, bring your children up to come and explore a variety of activities. If you have questions or if you want further ideas or you have specific questions about your child's activities or would like some ideas, I'm happy to present those and talk more individually with you. So this won't be a full hour today as far as the full group, but my hope is that after I'm finished presenting all of the slides, that you will come up here, join me, and explore some of the activities on the table today. So what does your child need in order to learn? We cannot expect a child to sit up if they don't have the core strength. And that's the same thing we need to stop and consider when we are developing or selecting activity for our child. What are the foundational things in which we need to make our child successful with any activity, whether it be the stereotypical academic activity or any activity that encourages or promotes independence? So the first thing we always want to consider here, the first block, the foundational block, is considering your child's cognitive and communication levels. The second block, what motivates your child? And there could be an entire presentation just on motivators and the impact of motivators. I'm not going to talk a lot about that today, but that's something that you always want to consider. The third block, does your child have any interfering behaviors that make it difficult to learn? And when I say behaviors, I'm not talking about aggression or just, I'm also talking about those things, but not just those things. It could be, is your child more likely to be sleepy in the afternoon? That's a behavior. That's something that will impact their learning. So when we're introducing a new topic, we want to make sure that we do it in the morning when they're more energetic, or if they're more tired in the morning, then we want to present that topic in the afternoon. So what kinds of behaviors make it difficult for your child to learn? What skills does your child need in order to gain or increase his or her independence? So with anything, with any skill, there are precursors or prerequisites that a child needs in order to be successful. We cannot expect them to pick a Cheerio up off the table with a pincher grasp if they haven't learned how to grab at it with more than one or more than 3 fingers or more than 2 fingers. And then once we have all of those things in place, then we can look to finally developing or selecting activity. So again, when we think about academic activities for your child, there is so much to consider. It's not just about picking an activity. It's about considering all the parts there. So one thing I really want to focus on is, how does your child communicate? At John Archer School, at the school that I teach at, we serve children ages 3 through 21 with severe to profound disabilities. So all students at the school that I work at are significantly impacted by their disabilities. And one term that we use a lot at our school is communication competence or communication competency. And that refers to both the implied knowledge of language and the ability to use it effectively. Learners should be able to make themselves understood using their current proficiency to the fullest. So for some of our students, using their current proficiency to the fullest is making a gesture, pointing to what they want. For some of our students, it's just making a sound or turning their head towards stimuli. For other students, it would be using words or showing understanding of picture symbols. So for each child, it's how are they using communication to their fullest ability. When it comes to academics, communication is the key, because if you don't have a communication method, then it's hard to assess what they know and what they need to learn to know. So the three main communication levels that we are going to consider today are the three that are mainly discussed at my school, which is pre-symbolic, emerging symbolic, and symbolic. But before we do look at those three, and those are the three we're going to focus on, I want you to have an understanding of some of the precursors to pre-symbolic learning. When we look at this communication matrix and the 7 levels of communication, you can see here that there's a lot that goes into communication. Pre-intentional, can you hear? Oh, Jiminy Cricket. Hold on. Thank you. I'm going to have my lovely assistant come up and help me. Okay, thank you. So this is the communication matrix in which I was speaking of. Let me get that X'd out here. Okay. So if we look at all of the things that go into communication, even before the pre-symbolic level, and pre-symbolic is the first tiered level that I'm going to go into more in depth about in a minute, but I just want you to kind of have an understanding of things that come in the pre-symbolic level. The pre-intentional behavior is the behavior that a child or student cannot control. The behavior is not always intended for communication. And actually, I have a better visual for this that's a little more fluid. Yes. So if we look at the different levels of communication, the example of the behavior is, I want to drink. Well, if you look at the first one, the pre-intentional behavior that I was just speaking of, a child cries. They're not necessarily trying to communicate with you that they want to drink. They're crying because they're hungry. So it's not necessarily to get your attention initially. The intentional or proactive behavior would be the child throws a cup or bangs the cup on the high chair tray. That is definitely trying to gain your attention. And all of these, of course, are nonverbal. And then the third non-conventional pre-symbolic communication is body movements, vocalizations, facial expressions, and simple gestures. So again, if we look at the I want a drink, the child hands you her cup or will pull you to the refrigerator. And then the conventional pre-symbolic communication, when we look at a child who is looking at you and then looking at her cup, or pointing to her cup and the refrigerator. Then we get into more concrete symbolic communication, which is the child hands you a picture of the cup, or would activate a voice output device to say, I want a cup, or I want juice. Abstract symbol communication would be a child signs juice or says juice. And finally, that language. Child says, want juice, or points to the symbol, I want juice. So you can see the progression there. So as I said, at John Archer, we look at 3 main communication levels, which are pre-symbolic, emerging symbolic, and symbolic. The pre-symbolic student shows a change in behavior or alertness in response to some sort of stimuli, sound, touch, or smell. And the student can make a purposeful protest at the pre-symbolic level, or a differentiated response, such as a smile, vocalizing, or a large muscle movement as a means of expression. For a student at the emerging symbolic level, students follow verbal and nonverbal commands without the need for physical prompting. So that physical prompting would be, you know, we kind of prompt them at the elbow to move towards the picture symbol. A child who's at emerging symbolic is beginning to pick up the picture symbol. They might not be discriminating that this is the cup and this is a snowflake. They might pick up a snowflake and hand it to you when they really want a cup. But they understand, or starting to understand, that a picture will get them something. Students initiate a purposeful attempt to communicate with a peer or adult at this emerging symbolic level also. And then a student at the symbolic level makes appropriate comments by asking questions or making relevant statements. Students communicate with a peer or adult for a series of more than 2 conversational turns. So now that you have an understanding of the 3 main communication tiers, let's explore some activities. Over on the left-hand column, you're going to see just like sample goals. And this wouldn't be an IEP goal, but just a very broad goal. So if you're trying to increase or trying to have your child express interest, some activities that you might want to do is just get on the floor with your child and explore, what do they gravitate towards? Make note of what they're going towards and what kind of activities they are doing with those toys. Maybe they're not playing with that toy in the way in which it was intended, but they are spinning the fan on the helicopter, the propeller on the helicopter. So from that, you might say, well, that's not how we play with the helicopter, but I know another toy that has a fan that we can get her to broaden her play-based abilities, and then go from there. And then think about senses in the form of near senses, which is touch and movement, and distant senses, vision, hearing, and language. For some of our learners, they're near senses learners. So they might be exploring something by mouthing it, or having to touch it, or squeeze it, or shake it, as opposed to those distant senses, which would just be looking at it, listening to it, or using language. Is your child demonstrating preferences? You can provide, and I cannot stress this enough, provide repeated opportunities for children to experience various stimuli. How they engage with a toy or an activity one day may not be how they engage with it a year from now, or a month from now, or even a week from now. So even if you've given your child that same toy 25 million times, look for different ways in which they are engaging with it, in which they're looking at it or manipulating it. Does your child understand cause-effect relationships? So a lot of voice output devices or toys, they'll activate, but are they really making the connection that when they push down on that toy that it's lighting up, or that it's vibrating, or that it's making a sound? Does your child truly have a cause and effect awareness of that toy? And just because they have a cause and effect awareness of one toy doesn't automatically mean that they're going to have it for the next toy. So look for that generalization of cause and effect over a variety of toys or activities. Establishing mutual attention. There are so many great games now that are designed for younger children that don't involve a lot of waiting, and they're very engaging using the multi-senses. There's one that's called the school bus, or Wheels on the Bus, and the child pushes a button to hear the song, and then they have to find, so if the song says the wheels on the bus, or the horn on the bus goes beep, 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 they have to find the picture of the horn. So there are all sorts of games out there, so really be looking for things that use a variety of modalities to really engage your child. The first one, the sample goal would be child will indicate desire to repeat a preferred interaction with an adult or a peer. This is the one that I feel is so difficult in the classroom setting and in the home setting. Oftentimes we go and we sit down with our child, and there are distractions when we're playing, or we go into playing with it the way that maybe we want to see our child playing with an activity or a toy. Really pause to allow your child to interact with the toy or with you, and follow their lead. When we follow our child's lead in play, there comes so much learning and so much communication and so many opportunities. So really, when you are sitting down to play with your child, let them take the lead. Imitate what they're doing. A lot of times I like to do what's called like a mirror play. So even if the child is using a toy in a way that isn't functional or wouldn't be considered the typical way to play with it, I will imitate the exact way they're playing with it. And oftentimes that child will take note and increase their awareness of what I'm doing, because that's not the typical way that I play with a toy. And then they'll kind of see that I'm imitating them. So often we ask our children to imitate us and what we do. Take that time in play to engage with them by imitating what they do, to get a reaction and to encourage communication and social interaction. So some ideas that you can use at home with things that you have or things that you can find at the dollar store, or ways that you can play with toys that your child currently has in a different way. I'm going to show you a variety of play boxes. Play boxes are individualized containers, and you'll see on this container there's a grocery or a food picture symbol on the front. So this would be clearly labeled and would have a lid on it, and you would take it out, and inside there would be that visual. Now the visual can be used in a variety of ways. You can use it receptively, so you touch the bowl with the spoon and stirring. You might put some of that fake food in a bowl and stir it up. Encourage your child to watch you, imitate you, and say, look, I'm stirring, and point to the picture symbol. At this time, you don't want to even ask your child to, you don't want to show them and say, well, what do you want to do? You can just use this as a receptive language tool. So you're pointing to the picture symbols, and you're using it as communication. I think I was listening to the other speaker who was talking about the fact that we put these voice output devices in front of our children and just expect that they're going to be able to use them. But oftentimes, we need to slow it down and make sure that we are showing them how we want voice output devices or picture symbols to be used. So we're going to use it by, when we're talking to our child, not only speaking, but pointing to what we're doing or what we're playing with, and hopefully eliciting more social interaction and receptive and expressive language that way. Are there any questions before I move on about anything? Okay. So I'm going to show you more examples of play boxes. This one is a doctor's kit. So like I said with the other kit, you can just use it receptively, the picture symbols, or you could even take this card and cut it up and have your child use it expressively. But that's the great thing, is that you have this play kit and you can use it a different way every time you get it out and play with it. Some days, maybe only use the materials that are in the box. Don't even worry about the visual. Other days, follow your child's lead. Don't worry about the visuals. See what they're doing, imitate their play. Another way you can use this box, cut those picture symbols up. See what picture symbol they pick up. And if they pick up the picture symbol that says, I'm going to look in your ear, then you will react to that. Oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to look in your ear, so that they start making that cause and effect. Oh, every time I pick up a picture symbol, my mom does the motion on it. So there are just so many ways that you can use these play boxes. Another example of a play box is construction fun. This really gets into a lot of fine motor skills. You can use the drill, hammering. You can even embed math skills into it. If you hammer 1, 2, 3, see if your child will imitate 1, 2, 3 or 1, 2. And this one's my favorite, the play box, taking care of baby. Oftentimes we go right to feeding the bottle or giving a kiss, but there are so many things we can do. We can wrap the baby up. We can put the baby in a bassinet. We can sing the baby a lullaby. So there are so many things, again, that we can do. So I'm going to talk, the next segment of this activity I guess you're seeing a theme here, is that so many academics are learned through play. And I'm going to talk about 4 main play activities that you can do with your child to promote academics or academic success in the future. Because when we look at our child's academics, we're looking at functional academics. So stacking and nesting toys. There are so many benefits to these because you can work on prepositional concepts of in and out, putting the purple cup next to the blue cup, putting the purple cup on top of the blue cup, putting the purple cup behind the blue cup. So there's so many ways you can talk about prepositions. And then once that child works with you one-on-one at a table or on the floor with these little cups, generalizing those prepositional phrases to go put your shoes by the door. Go get your hat that's in the drawer. If they can learn these prepositional phrases in play, then they can start to follow those directions. Color concepts, shape concepts, especially if you have different sets of cups in different shapes, your child finding, okay, this small cup doesn't go here because it's not fitting in. And that goes into the size concept of bigger, biggest, small, smaller, smallest, or small, medium, large. Just a little tidbit, when I work with sizes with my students, I use because I always debate, should I use the words big and little, or big and small, or large and small? I tend to go towards small, medium, and large. And the reason that I do that is because that is a phrase that's used out in restaurants. I want the small drink, or I want the large ice cream, large milkshake. That's definitely the case for me all the time. So I tend to gravitate towards small, medium, and large because I know my students will really be hearing that out in the world. Not that they won't be hearing little and big, but I just find there's more of a correlation. The concepts of full and empty can also be used with stacking and nesting toys. You can fill them up with beans, sand. If your child is prone to putting things in their mouth, fill them up with edibles that won't hurt them. Cheerios, goldfish, things like that. Even sprinkles or jimmies, no matter where you're from, depending on where you're from. Stacking and nesting toys continued as far as concepts that you can gain from this activities. Counting skills. Let's see how far we can stack up this cup. Ready? 1, 2, 3, and then knock it over. And the next time, can they get to 4? Problem-solving skills. Figuring out which cup stacks on others best or nest within others best. Stacking and nesting toys facilitate fine motor and motor planning skills. And if your stacking cups or nesting cups have pictures of animals or letters on them, you can also use this to teach literacy activities. If your stacking cups don't have pictures on them, then tape your own. Maybe you want to put family members on them. So maybe daddy's the tallest, so you put daddy's picture on the biggest nesting cup. Mommy's medium, so we'll put mommy's on the medium, and then your child on the smallest. Again, that kind of reinforces other concepts. Another activity is take small toys, like a little animal, and hiding it under a cup. Again, this is promoting object permanence. The animal is not here, but which one did I put it under? Oh, I put it under the red cup. So now you're embedding math skills, early math literacy. If you're using plain plastic colored cups, you can draw or tape pictures of any target vocabulary, like I said, like family members, or vocabulary that they may be using in school. So maybe in October, the theme for their unit that month is things we find in the fall. So in order to reinforce what your child's learning at school, you can put pictures on the nesting cups and reinforce in a different way at home. The next toy that promotes academic or engaging in academic success is blocks. I was listening to the radio years ago, and I wish I would have caught where the source was, but they were saying that blocks promote the most brain development of any toys When we look at toys today, we think of all the toys that make noises and can do so many wonderful things. But it was interesting to me that blocks were categorized as the #1 toy for brain development. So again, blocks you can use to promote prepositional concepts: on, under, next to, in front, bottom, all those. Color concepts, shape concepts. And again, if you want to promote letter awareness, using blocks with the letters of your child's name. So let's see. My name is Amy. Let's see. Would A come first or M come first? And you can put the blocks in a row or stack them up. And then when they get their first name, you can do their last name and have them knock into each other. There's nothing better than a block tower falling. Blocks can promote counting skills, problem-solving skills, how to create a stable tower that won't fall down. Blocks promote hand-eye coordination and fine motor skills, in addition to visual processing. And again, what goes along with creating a stable tower, that cause and effect relationship. Well, the tower didn't stay up on the carpet, but when I put it on the tile floor, it stayed upright. So, okay, I think next time when I go to play with those blocks, I'm going to start in the kitchen this time. So, building those cause-effect relationships. When a friend is over, children can practice sharing those blocks, cooperation when building a tower, and problem-solving skills. And of course, math and science principles can be discussed or shown with blocks, with gravity and balance. And I never knew this, but there are 3 stages of block play. When I looked more into blocks, when I was first going through this, I thought of all the many things that we do with them, but there are 3 stages of block play that to me kind of mirror the communication levels our students are at. So there's pre-symbolic, and I kind of associate this with stage 1 of block play, which is the tote and carry stage. So your child may not be very into playing with blocks, but they may be into piling them up, hauling them, and dropping them, putting them in a dump truck and making them fall out. And this is all about learning how to play with blocks. That's okay. If your child's not stacking towers, they don't have to at that point. If they're more interested in toting and carrying them around, that's teaching certain concepts. It's teaching gravity, cause effect. Children like order and structure, but at the young age, a lot of them just love chaos. And let's be honest, so do the older kids. So the next stage of block play is stack and row. So this, to me, would be mirroring the emerging symbolic communication. So they are understanding that, okay, we can put these blocks in a certain way, and while we don't have a specific purpose for it yet, we can start to see the beginnings of patterns. So again, this is encouraging math, because math is the study of patterns. Also, this is a time when you can look into fractions, when we have different shaped blocks, putting them into how will they fit? Well, the triangle won't fit on this point, but it will fit on this edge. And I'm going to pause here just so you can read over this. I just kind of briefly overviewed stack and row, the stage 2 of blocks. And while I'm pausing and giving you time to read, that's another thing I wanted to talk about. When you're engaging your child in any activity, whether it be play-based or whether it be academic-based, communication-based, you want to give your child wait time. And that's so hard for all of us. One thing I try to do is what I heard referred to once as the pregnant pause. Instead of 9 months, you're waiting for 9 seconds. Which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you count 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi, 6 Mississippi, 7 Mississippi, 8 Mississippi, 9 Mississippi, that seems like a significant time, but that is a good time just to remember to give our children time to process what has been requested of them. So again, when playing, when doing academic activities, slow it down and make sure that you're offering enough processing time. So the third stage of block play is bridging. And that's when children are using blocks in order to organize and enclose space. So putting one block on one side, the other block on the other side, and making a bridge by putting the longer block on the top. Learning balancing, experimenting with symmetry, and then how am I going to fill this space? It sounds like a basic question, but it's very complicated and requires a lot of problem solving. It also requires that the child plan ahead. The next toy that can encourage academic success are balls. The concept of in, on, off, again, those prepositional phrases, putting balls through hoops, that hand-eye coordination. Again, color concepts, size concepts. There are so many wonderful balls that have different tactile feels. So learning your child's preferences, maybe this is a way to motivate them. Does your child like a squishy ball that has a watery feel? Well, maybe you want to do an academic activity that would have letters with water, because you see how much that child loved playing with the water ball. Maybe throw all the balls in the water and then find the letters within the container. So there's just so many things that you can do to incorporate incorporate what motivates that child, and especially related to the feels or the senses. Counting concepts, throwing in 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, throw. Problem-solving skills, which balls fit into what containers. And again, this can be a matching activity. The red ball doesn't fit in the blue container because the blue container is too small. It's also not the same color. Gross motor planning, and social skills. I don't know if you've ever tried to have two children who are working on engaging with one another roll a ball to one another, but I have, and it is one of the most difficult tasks because it requires so much attention and it requires so much planning. They have a ball in their hand, we're sitting on the floor, we're rolling it to our friend. Well, once that ball has left that child, sometimes they get distracted and they forget they have to maintain focus on their friend in order to get that ball back. And then here it notes too, reading your friend's nonverbal language cues, waiting patiently, that's a hard one for adults too. I'm just to make sure I got everything on here. And again, maintaining that watch on your friend. And the final toy I'm going to talk about today, as far as toy activities, are shape sorters. There are so many different shape sorters out there. When I think of a shape sorter, I oftentimes think of that stereotypical round shape sorter that has 3 shapes up on the top that a child can put a shape into. But nowadays, there are such a variety of shape sorters. The one on the bottom that's red and has the blue and green shape on the top, when you put those into the shape sorter, they make a noise. Sounds like a little monster moaning or something. But that is you know, I've had other students who have the stereotypical shape sorter. They're not successful with that one. But just having that little auditory reinforcer will promote their attention and focus and make them want to do it. So again, just because they don't like one activity, so they don't like one shape sorter, doesn't mean that you should exclude every other, well, they don't like shape sorters, I'm just gonna try something different. There are so many variety of shape sorters and varieties of toys in general. If they don't like one, don't ever be opposed to trying a different one, because it can make, the littlest of detail can make a big difference for motivation and having a child be successful or want to do the activity. So shape sorters, of course, reinforce shape concepts, color concepts, the concept of full and empty. When I'm working with shape sorter with the students, the one thing they love as a reinforcer, they'll put it in and I'll just shake it violently. They love it. Sometimes they get to shake it or I'll shake it. They just love the sound of that chaos or things falling. And if the student really loves to see things fall, then after they filled up the shape sorter, I'll let them take the lid off and dump it. Because if that's what motivates them, then that's what we want to provide for them. counting skills, and of course, problem-solving skills. Going back to the shape sorter too, when I'm working with a child who's having difficulty with it, with putting a shape into a shape sorter, I will give them the circle first because of course that one is the easiest, they don't have to turn it. But let's say we've moved on to the square or the triangle. If they're really having difficulty, what I will do first is I want them to be successful with just turning. So I will cover up all of the holes except for the shape they have so they can just focus on turning. So we can, and then once they start to figure out, oh, we'll have to turn this, then I will uncover the other holes because we want to, sometimes we need to go back and segment for them to be successful. Does that make sense to everybody? I really like this quote. It says, sensory play is really part of the scientific process. And that's really play in general also. Whether out loud or within internal dialogue of the mind, children have developed a question, leading them to investigate by grabbing, smelling, listening, rubbing, staring, licking, what have you. They are using their senses to collect data and from that attempt to answer their own questions. Whether or not young children are always able to verbally communicate this process is still a valid exercise in scientific inquiry. And the reason that I put this quote on here is I've worked with parents who really have frustrations because sometimes their child doesn't engage with an activity or a toy in what we consider a typical way. They're throwing it or they're mouthing it. And that can be frustrating. But when we really stop to think about what our child is doing and why they're doing it, they're really trying to make sense of the world around them. So this is the final part of this presentation. I want to kind of go over just some play activities that you can do, again, to promote engagement, which is getting messy and having fun. You'll see a list here: cornstarch dough, modeling dough, quick salt dough, salty paintings, exploring paste, corn syrup painting, peanut butter dough, cloud dough. I have all the recipes for these. I am not a cook. I am not good at cooking. So if I have these, it means they're very easy to make. So I have these all up here in a folder that I encourage and invite you to come up and look at. Another thing that is up here on the table that I would invite you to explore are different multisensory activities that engage students. I was talking about earlier how we can use different materials like blocks or balls to encourage early literacy and understanding of letters. One thing I've done is I've tried to develop tactile letters. So even if a child doesn't understand this is the letter N, they still get a lot out of this letter N. There's numbers on it. So again, we're promoting early math literacy. And it's not just a letter on paper. They can feel it, they can touch it, they can experience it. And all of that eventually, hopefully, will lead to that understanding. And there are more in here. These are D for diamonds, T for trees, and they're very tactile and engaging. Let's see. Letter J, jingle bells, they can hear it. And again, with these type of letters that I've made, I would never just leave a child to play with them independently. I would always monitor them because if a piece falls off, we want to make sure nothing goes in the mouth. H, hair. And then there's a whole variety in here. So I invite you to come up and see these. Another thing I have is a whole sheet on pre-writing activities. So your child may not be grasping a pen or pencil to hold and even imitate strokes. But if you get a black trash bag, put it on the table, and spray some shaving cream on it, then you can work with them on different motions. Maybe they don't have the ability to hold and write and imitate your motions using a pen, but maybe they'll use their hand. So if you shake it horizontally, they might shake their hand horizontally in the shaving cream. And they'll see that they're the cause and effect because the white will clear and the black trash bag will show through. And just a word to people who have their rings: when you wear your rings and use shaving cream, it shines your rings up. So get them on. I also invite you to come up and see different visuals that I use for early literacy activities. I try not to ever have just a book that's two-dimensional without having something that a child can hold. or feel or experience. Because I believe strongly that when we show a child a book, especially a child who doesn't always make a connection between a picture and a picture symbol, we want to make sure that we can make that book come alive. So, Are You My Mother? In that book, you'll see a mother bird with a little handkerchief on her head. And now they can experience that little mother bird with a handkerchief on her head. So maybe they just experience holding the main character of the book in their hand. Maybe you put the bird out and the blue ball and the bird nest out, and you say, what says tweet, tweet, tweet? And that child can pick up the bird. What can we throw? You know, so again, you can use these three-dimensional objects to answer comprehension questions, even just identifying parts of the story, or you can use it for that child just to remain engaged in the book. Oh, I see, Mary, you're holding the bird, and that's what's on the page of this book. I also have a step-by-step science book up here that I invite you to come look at. In this book, not only are there different science activities, I'm going to get out of the way, but there are also pre-made voice output device options in here. So if your child is using a single switch at school, or if they have a voice output device that has 4 blocks on it, then there are already pre-made verbal cues that we can give to that child. And of course, I have a whole host of cause and effect toys up here for you to explore, or your child to come up and explore. Anything else? Before I end, I do want to show a video. I've talked a lot about communication and engaging a child. If your child does have an understanding of what picture symbols are, I want you to kind of look at this video. It's called Partner-Assisted Scanning. And this is something that is relatively new to me. I haven't utilized it in a way I feel has been effective yet, because I haven't really known how to do it effectively. But we actually were just trained this year by our assistive technology team at school in the spring. So this is something that I will be utilizing coming up this fall in the school year. And I wanted to invite you to look at it. And again, this is another way to engage your child in all activities, not just academic activities.
Partner-assisted scanning is a communication strategy that can be used with people with significant motor or visual impairments. Partner-assisted scanning can be used as a primary communication mode, or it can be used in conjunction with an augmentative communication device. If the communication device is broken or unavailable, or it just doesn't have the appropriate vocabulary, partner-assisted scanning can be used to communicate important wants and needs. So partner-assisted scanning can also be used as a strategy to teach young children how to communicate through the process of scanning. Partner-assisted scanning works by the communication partner scans through choices allowed.
Orange, yellow. When you hear the one you want, I need you to get your button over here, okay?
And a communicator indicates a positive response. They can indicate a positive response using a facial expression, such as a smile. They can also use a body movement, such as an eye blink or raising one's hand. They can also use a vocalization or a simple voice output device, such as a Big Mac, that's programmed to say, "That's the one I want," or "Yes, that's the one." There are lots of advantages to partner-assisted scanning. First of all, it's often very difficult for someone with motor impairment to time their movements. So partner-assisted scanning can eliminate the timing. Basically, the communication partner can increase or decrease the rate at which they're offering or presenting choices, so that depending on how the communication partner is responding at that particular time. Choices can be presented in a couple of different ways. They can be presented auditorily only.
So, Kaven, you told me today you want to play music. Is that right? Yeah, I hear you. So do you want to do drums? Do you want to do cymbals? Or do you want to do bells? When you hear the one that sounds like fun, I want you to hit your switch and tell me, that's the one I want.
They can also be presented auditorily and visually by speaking the choices in addition to pointing to a picture or a picture symbol icon.
Do you want to do red? Orange? Yellow? Blue?
When choices are presented by a communication partner, they're first listed through one time without waiting or expecting a response from the communicator. Then they're listed through a second time, this time allowing for a pause so that the communicator has time to respond. It's important to present choices in a consistent sequence so that the communicator expects and anticipates what choice is coming next. When they expect and anticipate what's coming next, they can often get ready for the answer, and the communication interaction is more successful. It's important to always offer a way out of the communication sequence. For instance, the choice that the child wants might not be available and the choice is offered by the communication partner. If that's the case, it's important to provide a way out by offering a choice such as none of those or that's not the one I want. Once the partner-assisted scanning technique is mastered, a communicator might move on to a more sophisticated system, such as scanning on a communication device. They may also move on to scanning with a larger number of choices or vocabulary words. When a larger number of choices is presented using partner-assisted scanning, the communication partner first points to a group of words, letters, or picture symbols. Once the group of words is selected by the communicator, each choice is then scanned through by the communication partner until the preferred choice is reached.
Like? Thank you for telling me with your body. So you say, I like. Now you know what? This is where we need to do one of those little words. Remember those little words that Miss Justine's always talking about?
Partner-assisted scanning can be an effective communication strategy, especially for families as they explore a more sophisticated communication system for their child.
Okay. So I just want to kind of give you an idea of partner-assisted scanning. I don't think it's often talked about, and like I said, it's something I'm excited to start or do more of in my classroom this year. With that, I am going to conclude my presentation. But like I said, I invite all of you to come up and explore things. If you have your child in here with you, invite them to play and interact with things. And if you have any individualized questions or any comments, I would be more than happy to listen and talk with you. I have my contact information up here, so please don't hesitate to contact me.
All right, thanks to Amy. And